All right, so welcome everybody. I'm so pleased that you've decided to join us on this evening for this internship presentation. So all about internships at AeroVironment. I'm your host, Julie Carpenter. I'm part of the talent acquisition team at AeroVironment, and I've been with the company about 4 years now, and just really excited to be a part of this internship program with you all. I also have some co-hosts today. On the line with me, we have Haley, Savannah, Diego, and Bridge, who are former AV interns. And that's going to be the best part of the presentation. So stick around. I will be quick so that we can turn it over to them. So who are we? Who's AeroVironment? Maybe some of you have heard of us before, but maybe this is your first time hearing about AeroVironment. We are actually celebrating our 50th anniversary this year, and we are so excited. What better way to kick that off? And I don't have a picture of it on this slide, but we worked on the Mars helicopter, so Ingenuity, that flew on another planet, can you believe it, this year. So we're very excited to be celebrating our 50th anniversary with that as kind of an accomplishment, achievement. So again, founded by Dr. Paul McCready, we are all about innovation and doing more with less. We've worked on a lot of really cool projects. First human-powered flights. You may have seen the nano hummingbird that was on the cover of Time magazine. So just a lot of really great products, focusing a lot on unmanned aircraft systems. And now we've actually, even beyond 2019 during COVID, we acquired a few companies, and we are now in the medium unmanned aircraft system, not just small. And we also have an unmanned ground robotics group as well. So do check out our sites. I have a quick little snippet of what our new virtual showroom looks like. So navigate to our homepage, avinc.com, and you'll get to see, this will be the first pop-up when you go to that page. And you can check out all of the different products that we have going on right now, or even special projects like Ingenuity. And you are here because you are interested in early career opportunities. And we do offer those. We offer several, and I'll go into some specifics about location, about what types of roles we hire. But I thought that this was a fun picture on the left here of a few of our engineers who actually worked on Ingenuity. And this was before it flew. So the picture's a little outdated. I should get one of them celebrating. We do have a few photos that we just received of the whole crew celebrating the different flights. And we've had a few events this year that have been fun to celebrate that as well. And benefits, I would be remiss to not mention that one of the perks of working at AeroVironment is our great benefits. These are designed more for the full-time opportunities, but we do tend to hire some of our interns. We like to convert our interns to full-time employees. And we were recently certified again, back-to-back as a great place to work as voted by our employees. So even our intern team gets to enjoy the 980 workweek schedule, which means every other Friday is a day off. So if you wanted to go back and visit family or work on special projects, then you absolutely use that time to do so. Now the fun stuff. So I'll go into some of the frequently asked questions and basics around our internship program, and then I'll turn it over to our other hosts. So what areas do we hire in? We hire in aeromechanical, mechanical, autonomy and robotics, electrical, computer science, also known as software engineering in our company, and guidance, navigation, and control. We have folks on the line from all of those specialties. So I'm very excited, not only our panel members, but I know some students as well. I've seen some of those majors come through. And as far as our locations, they're listed there below. The primary chunk of that group will be located in Southern California. That's just because that's where most of our employees are located. So we have just under 1,000 employees now, and we've grown significantly over the past few years. And we hire typically anywhere from 30 to 40 interns, but that number is growing as our company does grow. So more in the Simi Valley, Moore Park area, but we also opened an office up north that has about 200 employees there in Petaluma, California. It's beautiful. And then a few smaller offices. Lawrence, Kansas is about 15 employees, but we do hire a few aeromechanical interns there. And then Wilmington, Massachusetts, we have about 60 employees, I think, at that site now. And we do hire a handful of interns at that site. New with our acquisition again this year, we have smaller sites in Manassas, Virginia, and Minneapolis, Minnesota as well. So there will be opportunities opening up. Not all may be listed here, but do keep an eye on our WayUp page, and you'll be the first to know and hear when those opportunities present themselves. And minimum qualifications, of course, you do need to be a currently enrolled student. You must be able to work a full-time schedule over summer, and that's on our 980 work week schedule. And then you must be a U.S. citizen, permanent resident, green card holder. We are not sponsoring green cards or international students at this time. So, you'll need to meet that requirement. We're working on a lot of Department of Defense contracts, and that's partly why we're not able to host that. However, if you have a dual citizenship, say, and we actually had an intern in this case last year who was a citizen of Germany and had U.S. citizenship, that was fine. So if you have any questions about that, you can always ask. And then, of course, you'll have to complete and clear a drug and background screen. And because we are a federal contractor, you will need to be vaccinated prior to starting your internship with us. And then each individual job description will have a few extra qualifications based on what knowledge you will need to bring to that role. So we get asked a few other questions. Are we hiring graduates? So say you're graduating in May. Yes, we do. However, those would not be internships if you were just graduating and planning on rolling right into a full-time role. You want to check out our standard careers page and see what entry-level roles we have available. There are fewer, I will say, than there are of the senior level roles, but we do have a few open specifically right now in software and in mechanical as well. So do check that out. There are a few of them, but I encourage you to apply if you're in that boat. Also, if you're headed into a graduate program, you may want to be considered for our graduate level internship program. So Diego on the line here, he was part of an undergraduate internship, and then he decided to pursue grad school, and we were so happy for him, pursuing that extra knowledge. We're hiring him as a graduate level intern again for this past summer, and then we'll see what happens this coming summer as well. Will they be remote or in person? So with COVID, we learned that we have a little bit more flexibility in what we do, and so it's not a black and white answer of yes or no. It's really based on the position. So some positions can be successful working remotely, others cannot. And certainly if it's a hands-on role, like a lot of, I think even electrical engineering roles require some solder work or hands-on activities, then those would be in person. So I would say most of our internship roles will be in person this coming summer. Interview process, typically we have a recruiter phone screen, manager phone screen, and then a panel with the team. However, our internship screening process is slightly different and somewhat expedited. So if you were to talk to one of our panelists, what was your interview experience like? I think I'll recall back to Bridge and I and the hiring manager were on one phone call, and we were able to accomplish getting through all of the questions that we needed, and we recognized that it was a great fit. So we did one round interview. So we like to be quick, we like to be streamlined. That being said, sometimes we take a little bit longer in our process because we get a lot of applications right now, and our hiring managers may not have an opening to meet with all of the different applicants until later next month or into December. And so we don't have a definitive timeline, but we try to make sure that we're getting those offers out no later than January, February, understanding that you'd be starting in May or June. Again, we are not sponsoring international students at this time for visas. Co-ops, that's another frequent question we get. We don't typically our program is a summer internship program, pretty standard. However, we have in the past had a few co-ops, more so in our Boston office with some of the partner schools up there. But I would say majority are just the summer-based internship roles. Relocation, we are happy to relocate you if you live greater than 50 miles from an AeroVironment site. We will pay to bring you to the site and return back either to home or to school. And we will cover a portion of your base monthly rent while you are living near an AeroVironment site. And we recently implemented a formal mentorship program. We've always kind of had an informal mentorship program, but you will be assigned a mentor. You will also be paired up with what we call a buddy, and the buddy will be helping you get acclimated to not only the company, but the people, the processes, our intranet, etc. And we briefly talked about the hiring timeline. Again, right now, go ahead and apply. We have our applications up on WayUp. And so do check those out. If we post any additional roles, those will be there. And if you've signed up to be notified, you will see that. Now on to the best part of our presentation, our panel members. And I'm going to go ahead and turn it over and let them introduce themselves, maybe starting left to right. So Haley, if you'd like to go ahead and introduce yourself, please.
Hi, everybody. I'm Haley, and I currently go to Cal Poly Pomona, and I'll be graduating this semester.
Hi, everybody. I'm Savannah. I currently go to Georgia Tech, and I'm a fourth-year aerospace engineering major.
Everyone, my name is Bridge. I'm currently a junior studying computer science at UC Riverside, and I'll be graduating next spring.
Hi, everyone. My name is Diego. I'm a graduate student at Texas A&M University, and I'm studying aerospace engineering.
Excellent. I hear the claps and applause from the chat. So very excited to have you. Thank you for joining us. I know that many of you are getting near midterms, and so you're volunteering your time, which is so important because you are now addressing students who were in your shoes. And I think it's important that they know kind of what your process was, and they definitely had a lot of questions for you, which I'll post up on this next page. And maybe we can kind of just go again, trading off on these questions, and then we'll have some that come through the chat as well. But what does a typical day look like? Maybe for each of you, just briefly.
In a typical day, what I do mostly right now is a lot of CAD drawings. So any new drawings that they need, I'll make. Also designing new parts right now is mostly my job right now.
I've actually interned with AV for 4 different summers, so my typical day has been different every summer. For one of them, I was testing solar panels. Last summer, I was working on building a prototype model to test different flight configurations. And my first summer, I was working on control surfaces.
I was actually a 2-time intern. I interned at AV for 2 summers. And just like Savannah, every day was different. But since I was on the software engineering team, it was a lot of coding. The first summer was a lot of manual testing, and then the second summer it transitioned into more application development. So
like Bridge, I was also a 2-time intern with AeroVironment, and I worked in guidance, navigation, and controls. And for me, my day mostly looked like running simulations and different types of software, as well as flight analysis. So you'd have the vehicle flying, and we record the data, and I would be asked to perform an analysis on it.
Excellent. And this question came up a few times as well. What's kind of the most exciting or best part of your internships? And maybe it was different each summer.
The best part was honestly doing all of the different projects, because at least I had about 3 different projects each summer. I've also been an intern for 2 summers, and I'm part-time with them. So I got to do like designing new parts, fixing some of the drones, and that was a lot of fun to me.
Thanks, Haley. How about you, Savannah?
Working with the same project over the past 4 summers has been really fun because I get to see it at different stages. And 2 summers ago, I got to see the vehicle that I've been working on fly, and it was just amazing, like actually getting to see all the hard work that me and everybody else on the team had put into it, and then seeing it up in the air. It was great.
yeah, I was also actually on the same team for the past 2 summers, and it was really cool seeing things you did in certain summers and how they grow through your next summer. I remember this summer, I wrote like entirely new code base for the basis of testing, and how much it grew from last summer, from the time I was in school and when I was using it this summer. And so that was a pretty cool part. And then obviously writing code, seeing it run in front of your face, and then hopefully that application can get spread to other teams as well. It's pretty cool.
I enjoyed being able to see my code and my work implemented in a real life project, just like Savannah said, and also just in an observable amount of time. It's not like those projects that take decades to see any implementation or work get done. Like over the course of a summer, the work that I did was fully implemented, and I could see that in a product.
Great, thanks. And then as far as work culture and environment, and this is going to be quite different, I think, because you all worked in different groups in different buildings, some of you remote and some of you on site. So tell us a little bit about that.
So I've been on site too and online. The environment, all of the people are really great people. Like you'll love everybody. Some of them will become like some of your best friends as interns, and you'll stay in touch with them after. Everybody is there like wanting to help you, no matter if they're your mentor on the project or just somebody on site. Like anybody will help you out on any project.
Kind of going off of what Haley said, everybody is incredibly helpful. One of my favorite things about the group that I was working with was how like tight knit everybody was. And every time I came back, it was like just picking up an old friendship again with where it had left off the previous summer. And one of my, everybody was really helpful. So one of the favorite things to do during downtime was I would just kind of wander around and I'd be like, hi, what project are you working on right now? And like, what can I learn from you? And they'd be really willing to tell me what they were doing and explain and be like, okay, cool. It was really fun just to get to see a little bit of everything. And it was nice that everybody was so excited to tell me what they were doing.
Yeah, Haley and Savannah really painted the picture for it. I was a remote intern for most of the time, so I don't know what like the physical work environment is like, but everyone's definitely really humble, really ready to talk, even some of the top leadership at the company. So it's a really cool work culture.
I experienced both in person and virtually, and everyone, no matter the setting, is always very helpful, just like the other panelists have mentioned. Super nice group of people, and I felt like in the work that I did, I was given a lot of independence to kind of work and figure things out on my own. And the nice thing was having a lot of coworkers that were always willing to give a helping hand. They had a lot of experience and a lot of tools that they were just willing to kind of provide for me whenever I needed a helping hand. So that was really nice.
Awesome. And then I think the programming languages might be slightly different, but there may be some overlap. So you guys want to talk about the programming language that you used?
I think that the only one that I've used is Python. And then also just a program is MATLAB that I've also used.
I didn't do much programming, but I knew that everybody in my project used MATLAB.
A lot of the majority of over the two of my summers was a lot of C# mainly. So
Working in flight simulation analysis, pretty much all of the analysis from flight data was done in MATLAB and Simulink as well. And simulations were all done in C++.
Excellent. So there's a variety there for sure. And then how long do typical projects last? I mean, were you able to work on something multiple summers? I think, Savannah, you already mentioned that you worked on similar activities for a few summers in a row, but Haley, you've been on kind of different sides of the internship too, on the mechanical and then the product side as well.
Yeah, so usually some projects have only been 2 weeks and some have been 2 months. Usually, like I said, they try and get at least 2 projects in, just so you have a variety of stuff to do.
Sounds good. Anything you wanted to add, Savannah?
My project just continues to grow every year. And so I was pretty much would work on something different every summer, and I would get my school, I'd have to go back earlier than normal. So I'd get this close to finishing it and then have to leave for school. But getting to work on something different every summer was really fun. So about 2 months for our stuff.
Okay. And then speaking of, did you ever finish that high altitude pseudosatellite model that you were making?
No.
Oh, no. I was hoping to bring it to a career fair trade show.
Well, so I didn't get to. I left the day after all the parts got shipped in finally. So I got to see all the parts for it. And then I had to leave the next day. But they got it built apparently. And I think they're going to begin testing on it. So I'm excited to hear how that goes.
Awesome. And then Bridge, you were able to work on, I think, different projects over both different summers, right?
I think both of them were Switchblade. One of them was 300 and one of them was 600, but they're pretty similar.
Some of the projects that I worked on started off as small tasks and they slowly evolved into like a bigger picture type thing. But in terms of just like assignments and projects that I would work on, kind of like Haley said, they could last anywhere from 2 weeks to 2 months. I think the longest project that I worked on was trying to parameterize a motor model for the Switchblade. And that one took a few months to do because we were missing a lot of pieces to the puzzle.
Great, thank you. And then as far as skills outside of the classroom, this question comes up as both, what should I focus on inside the classroom to prepare me for a career at AeroVironment, or maybe what can I do outside? So kind of open to whoever has a potential answer for this one.
So some skills outside is go and join a club related to your major is always a big thing. In class, be really paying attention to everything that they tell you, especially if you're mechanical, pay attention to more fluid software stuff that's going on. That helped me a lot. And one of the biggest skill is knowing how to communicate well. You want to be able to communicate with everybody you meet. Just know that nobody is there to like, oh, pretty much like they all want to help you out. So always have questions. If you don't know something, just always say it. But that'll help you prepare and just know how to prioritize your stuff and be self-motivated too, because they will sometimes give you some projects and just kind of let you go on your own and do them, and then just kind of check up on you once in a while. So just be self-motivated.
I will say the first 3 internships I showed up, and when they asked me what my skills were, they're like, do you know MATLAB? It's like, no, not yet. I haven't gotten there in school. And so I finally got to it last spring, and I showed up and I was like, I know MATLAB now. They're like, well, we don't need it now, but good for if you come back later. So definitely some kind of programming language, even if you're not a CS major, would be very helpful to know going into your internship, even if it's just a little bit, because I barely knew it to begin with. But like I was saying earlier, people are always so willing to teach you how to do things. So I worked with very minimal, small, basic codes to help them do some analysis a couple summers ago. So.
Thanks, Vanna. Bridge, I know you do a couple of classes and things. You're active on LinkedIn.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like soft skills are also really important, because I feel like technical skills can always be taught. You can always learn them down the road. But soft skills, like Haley said, communication is really important. A professional mindset, always wanting to learn, even having a growth mindset is really important as well.
And just to bounce off what Bridge and Haley said, I think that it's really important to kind of develop those kinds of personal skills and leadership skills that you can get like by holding a leadership role in an organization, because that ends up translating to how you display yourself in meetings and how you collaborate with your teammates. So that's a really important skill. As far as how my internship went and classes that were relevant for guidance, navigation, and controls, MATLAB is definitely something that I would recommend being comfortable with. It's used pretty much for anything. Doesn't matter what project you're on. If you're doing GNC, you're going to be using MATLAB. C++ is also somewhat important for the simulations. So that's another important coding language. But flight dynamics and control systems is a pretty strong basis for guidance, navigation, and controls.
I wanted to bounce off something that Haley said real quick about doing clubs related to your major. I was in a design build fly club at my school, and we built small scale model planes. And that actually really helped me this past summer when I was working on the small scale model, getting it ready to be built and designed. So definitely do stuff like that too.
Thank you. That's great feedback. And it's something too that kind of shows and stands apart on a resume, I would say, when we see design build fly, because it's something that a lot of our former interns and a lot of our current employees were a part of. It does stand out to certain hiring managers as well as Baja SAE. Maybe if you're an electrical, being a member of IEEE, not that it's mandatory by any means, but just showing that you have these kind of interests or hobbies in these other projects or areas. Definitely. And then what are some of your personal experiences like at AeroVironment? How was it over those years? You've all been there multiple summers. Was it harder, maybe the first one, or maybe it was harder, more challenging the second one because they knew that they could load you with work? So would love to hear from each panelist on this.
So my time at AV has been really good. I'd say that my second summer interning was my most difficult. I did stuff like researching composites and then making test plans for them, which I wasn't too familiar with composites all that much. Like I had some classes on them, but it was kind of a project of like go in and like, I mean, Hugh, I had as a mentor, helped me out a ton, but it was just a lot of new stuff. But it's one of those things that like you have a ton of people at AV willing to help you out and they want you to learn from it. So I'd say probably the second summer. And then just also did designing of a new rudder mount. So that was new too. And finding dimensions and everything that I needed for that.
Yeah, I would say that each summer got a little bit more challenging as I progressed with school and within my own skill set. I think the first one was challenging in the fact it was my first internship ever, so I was really just nervous to be there to begin with. And then last summer was the first time that I was mostly on my own working on projects, which was also very nerve-wracking doing that on the first time. But again, everybody was really there to help me and they wanted me to succeed and they got excited when I was succeeding. So that was nice to have that like support system there for me. So I was doing it on my own, but everybody wanted to help me. So
Yeah, for me, it was the same as well. My second internship was definitely harder than my first one. My first one was also my first ever internship, so I might have been getting babied, but the second one was definitely a lot more challenging, but it was also a lot more enjoyable because the harder work you're doing, the more fulfilling it is when you get it to work or when you get your code to run and get it to succeed and it's up to standards. So second time was definitely more challenging, but I feel like I had a better experience my second time as well.
And my experience follows the same trend here. The first time being a bit easier, second time being harder. And I think something that also made it a little bit more challenging was kind of being forced into doing part of the internship remotely the second time around. So that definitely added a bit of complexity to managing the internship. But overall, just a really good experience. I think one of my favorite experiences actually was getting to see flight tests for the product that I was working on. It's definitely like inspiring to see the things that you're working on just actually flying in the air. So I love that part about it.
That's great. Yeah, I think, has everyone on the panel had a chance to see, well, I don't think, Bridge, you've been to a flight test yet because you were remote. Haley, and I know Savannah, you got to see flights, but Haley, were you able to see a flight test?
Yeah, I've been out to 2 of them and it's really cool.
Oh,
It's really
awesome.
fun, yeah.
Which products did you get to see fly?
Raven and Puma.
Oh, excellent. Yeah, I actually put together my first Raven, Wasp, and Puma at the SWE conference last week. And so I said, although I'm on talent acquisition, I may not know all the specifics of this air vehicle. I can certainly assemble it. So I thought that was really cool. But just the design and thought that goes into being able to assemble a product. And I mean, I was at a fair, so it wasn't necessarily a high stress situation, but these are for people who might need to do it in a very timely or undercover type scenario. So it was just interesting to see and think of holistically where everything is coming from the design phase to the build stage. And we do manufacture on site. That was one thing I don't think I mentioned in the company facts, but yes, we do have a manufacturing floor. We build and assemble everything here in mostly California and some of the other locations as well. But I think what I'll do now is I'll answer some of these questions live or put it to the panel to answer live. So the first question comes from Nathan. And Nathan asks, what will computer science interns mainly focus on during the internship?
Yeah, I think I can answer that one. For computer science, it's really a broad area at AV. It honestly depends what team you're on, honestly. If you're on the QA automation team, it would be a lot of application development, or if you're on the development side, it could be a lot of embedded systems as well. I feel like it's heavily team dependent though. I don't think there's one really hard cut answer to that.
Okay. And then Diego, I think there's I always say that GNC is kind of that intersection between software, hardware controls. Do you have any input to that? What a computer science major might focus on?
Yeah, I mean, most of the coding that we do in GNC is analysis on flight test data. So you'll literally be taking just like huge chunks of data, parsing them, and then uh, typically using MATLAB to generate really pretty plots and all sorts of figures that you can deduct data from. Um, but programming actually comes into play with the simulation. So that's more C++ oriented. And it does help to kind of have that knowledge because this one thing that I never learned in school and I kind of had to do it on the fly was learning how to use C++. And it's something I definitely wish that I had known beforehand. But the experience, the internship experience definitely helped me understand that a lot better.
Great. And I think that that is kind of goes in line with another like question from Paul East. What's the greatest challenge you faced in the role and how did you overcome it? I don't know that, using C++ would have been your greatest challenge in the role, but for each and every panelist, what was probably the most difficult part of your internship?
Oh, I think I kind of said mine was the one project that I did. But pretty much being on your own in the beginning was kind of a little bit intimidating of you're given a lot of projects and it's kind of, I don't know, sometimes you feel like if you don't know what they're wanting and you kind of feel like you don't really want to go up to them and be asking them some questions about it, but always know that you can go up to them because they'd rather you go up and find out what you don't know than be sitting at your desk for like all day having no idea what to do. So it just going up and communicating well.
And finding other resources, I imagine too, not only within your team, but maybe across the company and trying to bridge out and meet new people. Harder to do when you're remote, but I think on site it's a little bit easier when people are there. You can just stop by somebody's desk and say, hey, what do you know about this project? Or what do you know about this software?
Yeah, because of some of your projects, the people may not even be in your own building. So you'll just go drive to the next building and go talk to some new people about it and see if they have some input on what you should be doing too.
I faced similar difficulties in the projects that I was working on, particularly in parameterizing the motor, because on that project, I was given a lot of autonomy on how to figure it out, trying to, when you're given a lot of freedom to work on a project, you also have to figure out all the constraints yourself. And it can seem very daunting. And if you have a lot of questions, it's easy to kind of get in your head and say like, oh, well, I can't just be asking everyone all the answers to these questions. So, but like Haley said, everyone there is here to help, and it's a super supportive team. So they are very helpful for that.
I think the most difficult part of last summer was I had to build a fixture to test motors on, and I'd never built any kind of fixture before. And it was one of those things where my manager was going to be gone the next week, and he was like, I need this by the time I get back, and then just left. And I was like, okay. So instead of just sitting around and trying to figure it out, I went and I asked around, I asked for help. I found somebody who's really good at building those kind of fixtures and got him to help me build half of it. And then I built the other half on my own and felt really accomplished after. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, for me specifically, I think one of the most difficult things was knowing what expectations to meet and knowing what standards to meet. When you're given just a task to do it, you're like, all right, implement this. It's really difficult to know, how it should look, how it should perform, because as code changes, so will your code in the code base. So I think that was one of the biggest things, was knowing how to work with new technologies and how to implement things properly.
That's great feedback. Thank you all. So I have another question from Smit on the line. For the interns who have experience working at other companies, how does AeroVironment differ? So I actually don't know, has anyone on the panel interned at any other company?
I was going to say I have, but it was a very different type of company. It was a mechanical engineering or mechanical electrical plumbing company. So that just differed very completely, because AeroVironment's a aerospace company, and the other one I was mostly doing CAD drawings for plumbing fixtures and that kind of stuff.
So which one was more exciting?
Definitely the one that makes planes fly.
Thanks. Thanks, Diego. Appreciate that. Let's see. Oh, someone said off-topic question, but I really like the panelists' Zoom backgrounds. Is it possible to share the image? I would really appreciate it. Yeah, there's nothing confidential or proprietary about this aside from our design team, I guess, in marketing building it. But yes, it's our Halloween background. So we have Halloween coming up. And yes, I can share that in the chat. Let's go on to the next question. This is from Justin. I have a lot of previous drone UAV research volunteering, but not much work experience. I was wondering, how does AeroVironment gauge an intern's project experience in general?
Could you repeat the last part of that?
Yeah, so how does AeroVironment gauge, maybe this is the hiring managers, how do they gauge an intern's project experience? So maybe looking at their resume.
When I first got hired on, I had done a lot of stuff in robotics before and very minimal drone activity, but I knew that drones is what I wanted to go into, which is why I applied here. And so my manager, knowing that I had done more robotics, my first year working here, he had me working on servos for control surfaces instead of making things fly to start. So I think they're pretty good at, if you tell them what you do know already and what your skill sets are, they'll kind of use those to help put you in the right project. And like I said, I ended up joining Design Build Fly at my school, which ended up helping me last summer with the subscale model that we did.
Thanks, Vanna. Appreciate that. This question comes from, and I apologize if I mispronounce your name at any time. It's either Region or Region, maybe. Do interns lead their own projects or do they collaborate with their respective teams? So has anyone on this panel led their own project or just collaborating amongst a team?
You may be on your own project, but you will always have a mentor and you usually collaborate with other people. So it isn't usually just you having your own project, like you always have your mentor helping you out.
I guess you're given a combination of kind of individual assignment, something that you would be working on by yourself, as opposed to something that needs to be shared with the team or kind of a group project, if you will. But yeah, I think that was very helpful, Haley. Appreciate that. Okay, another question. Any tips on how to stand out during the interview process? I want to see what you all think, and then I'm happy to give input, but what do you think helped you stand out to get hired with AV?
And at least I know for me, I focused on my club experience a lot and what I do with that, because I do hold a leadership role in my club. So that's what I really focused on and what I do and how that can relate to doing projects on my own and being self-motivated. Also talked about projects that I just did in classes too, because some of those can really relate to them hiring you.
I did the same thing in my interview. I really focused on the clubs that I was in because I knew that they had to do with engineering. And I also had leadership positions. And so I would use examples from how I had to be as a leader in the clubs to how that could apply to a workplace environment. And I also talked about soft skills and presentations that I'd given before.
I'm honestly not quite sure what made me stand out. I was a freshman when I applied, so that's also when COVID hit. So I wasn't really part of many clubs. Definitely didn't have any leadership positions in any clubs either. But in the interview, I definitely made sure to portray like my interests towards the position I was applying to and the passion for it. And with the projects I had going on, how I made them, and the process and the thinking behind them. So I'm thinking that's what made me stand out. I'm really not sure. But
I think I remember a big point of my interview. I tried covering a lot of extracurriculars that I had done, even if they weren't necessarily specifically related to things that I could be doing for AeroVironment or just that were related to my major. Sometimes there were things like just leadership positions or participating in design competitions. So I participated in one where I worked on a veterinary medicine design project, and that had absolutely nothing to do with aerospace or mechanical engineering at all, but it was still a really good usage of or a good opportunity for me to talk about my strengths, how I work with a team. And then there was also very specific parts about, oh, are you knowledgeable in this kind of language when it comes to aircraft controls and control theory, as well as just nomenclature, like literally things that you just learn in class, right? Are you familiar with the concepts that you've learned in class, and can you apply them to different types of projects that you may face during your internship? So that's kind of my experience.
And one thing I will add on to what they kind of said, kind of do look up the company to see what we do exactly and be able to talk to who's hiring you about that, because they want to know that you're interested in the company and what we do too.
These are all fantastic tips. I think it starts with your resume, making sure that you're putting down the skills that are important to the company for which you're applying, whether that be a programming language or a certain skill set that is listed on the job description. So there's another video that we recorded with our senior recruiters that talked about this, but kind of that tip, right? So tailor your resume, make sure that you're standing out with regards to that. It needs to be a match. We need to see that if it's asking for a C#, that you have that C# knowledge or experience, or at least that you've taken a class and can talk about during your interview how you applied those learnings to some of your class projects, or maybe it was past internships, so relating that experience as well. But yes, definitely an interest in the company. This is going to go throughout your entire career. Actually, if you're applying to a company that you're really motivated to work for because you actually care about what they're doing, what products they make, it's going to be a lot easier to exude that confidence, to exude that passion for wanting to work there, because you really do, not just because, well, I really want a job. Yes, many of us, we just really want a job. We want to be able to work and kind of get our footing there, but actually caring about the company and the products and doing your research as well, I would say, is always important. So check out avinc.com. There's my shameless plug. All right, so another question came through, and I believe it's Fio or Fio. For your first summer at AV, did you get a referral to apply? So I think a few of you were referral candidates. You still had to apply and go through the same process. So I guess raise your hand if you were a referral. Aha. So yes, referrals are important. They're great. So reach out to your networks. But Brish here actually found our posting on WayUp. He has a unique story. I'm not going to speak for him. Bridge, how did you hear about AeroVironment?
It's a pretty interesting story. I don't think anyone else has had this story, but I'm actually from the area. I'm from Thousand Oaks, if anyone knows where that is. But my senior prom was in Simi Valley, so I was just driving to senior prom. On the side of the freeway, I see just a white and black building, and it says AV AeroVironment there. And a couple of my friends in the car, like, they were familiar with the company, and so and I hadn't heard of it actually. So I went back home after prom. Maybe it was the next day even. I just looked it up, saw what they did. It was pretty interesting. They make drones, the general stuff, and I was following them ever since. And then I think it was on LinkedIn actually. I saw like something pop up on my feed saying, "Hey, AeroVironment has an opening for a software engineering intern." So I was like, "Oh, you know what? Hey, let's just apply to it. If it happens, it happens. If it doesn't, it doesn't." And yeah, I'm here today.
Thank you. Thank you for sharing that. The next question we have comes from Colson. Hi, I was just curious what CAD software is used most often.
All of our stuff was done in SolidWorks.
So that's what I use a lot. I use that pretty much every single day. And that's also something that I just practice in my free time too, to get good at it and know how to use pretty much every single thing on it.
Awesome. Thank you. Next question comes from Juliana. What new skills have you learned at AeroVironment that you use on a daily basis, or maybe that were applicable once you went back to school? You were able to use that and you learned it from AV. Or it could be personal. Maybe you learned a really great personal skill from working here and you can apply that to your personal life.
For me, it was composite materials is what I learned, and then I had a class on it, so that helped me out a ton.
I learned about tinsel testing last summer, and then I had a bunch of labs on it this summer for this semester for one of my classes. And I also learned about SolidWorks before I learned about it in class, which was nice.
For me, actually, the first summer, we had sprints every week, and for my major, we have to take like a software construction class, and it goes over GitHub, Git, agile development methodologies and things like that. So the internship definitely helped me get familiar with that material. But for my second internship, I did a lot of Windows automation. I feel like I would actually be able to use that on my personal computer if I ever want to automate anything or automate any other tasks, maybe. So that's definitely something I think I see myself using.
A lot of the skills that I actually used was just learn from working in teams, just kind of those soft skills as well. But in addition, there's also a lot of the technical skills like the other panelists shared. I learned a lot about designing motors and simulating as well as why it's important to learn the stuff that we do in school. Like for instance, you learn a lot of methods and like some software or math, and you kind of wonder, oh, why do we ever use this? Is this ever going to be useful for me? And then you're using it for the internship, and all of a sudden it's a really important tool for using for analysis. So learning that part also made it definitely more interesting.
Great, thank you. This question comes from Kizar. Hi, this is more of an application question. Is there a limit to how many positions we can apply to within AeroVironment? And the answer is no. Apply to any position that you think is suitable for your particular skill set. We've had people apply to multiple roles. Maybe they had some experience in electrical and mechanical, and they were open to either possibility, or maybe it was guidance, navigation, control, or software. There can be some overlap between some of the roles. So if you find that 2 roles look interesting or more, go ahead and apply for them. I would not recommend, though, applying for roles that you definitely have no experience or are not qualified for, because you probably won't be selected. That's just the nature of the game. I'm not going to apply for a senior systems engineering position, given that my background is in talent acquisition. However interesting that might be, I probably need to take a few classes and get a few years of experience before I apply to that level. So that's a good question, though. Thank you. And then this is a good question that came up from Arjun. For every panelist, what was the balance between hands-on work where you physically interacted with the products and more distanced work, such as making CAD parts or drawings? How was that balance?
I'd say for me, when on site, it was about probably half and half most of the time. I just got to do a lot of experience with both, and I did get to do a lot of testing while at AV. So I'd say that took up a lot of time, and that was also a cool thing to be doing.
I'd say it's probably a little bit more 70-30 for me. During my interview process, I think one of the questions that was asked was what I kind of wanted to get out of the internship. And I really emphasized on how I wanted that hands-on learning experience. So they knew that coming in, that if there's anything that needed me to like solder wires together or build like a little, trinket to test something, they would come to me and ask me to do it. So I think pretty much every day I was doing something physical where I was like actually touching the parts and either building or testing or going back and redesigning.
Yeah, I was 100% remote intern for both the summer, so I didn't really do anything dealing with hardware. But I know some of my teammates definitely, they went into like the hardware lab and tested some of the software in the hardware lab.
As GNC, most of the work that I did was online or just coding based. There were some things that I did enjoy going, in person for, such as this one. I think it was my first internship. I had to test some of the sensors on the switchblade, and so we, went into the lab and did some tests on that, as well as actually physically testing a motor. but that makes up like probably around 5% of the experience. Most of it is definitely just coding. And then there's also the flight test that fits in that 5%, but it's definitely worth it.
Appreciate it. And this question also came up from Hanan. If the panelists don't mind sharing again, what are your majors and the university you're studying at?
Mine is mechanical engineering, and I'm at Cal Poly Pomona.
Aerospace engineering at Georgia Tech.
I'm a computer science major at UC Riverside.
And I'm aerospace engineering at Texas A&M University.
Thank you. I know we talked about that earlier, but it might have been easily missed when I did my quick introductions of y'all. And here is a question from Stephen. How much do you believe your grades or GPA helped you stand out as an applicant?
I'm not gonna lie, I don't think the first time I got an intern, my GPA was even on my application. So I don't think that they even knew what it was. But I mean, when you talk to them, you should kind of mention it in your interview. Just make sure that like you do well in classes, you know what you're talking about.
Anyone else? Or I mean, I can just speak broadly from the recruiting aspect. GPA is important, but it's not the end all be all. Certainly those higher GPAs show that you have been committed to that work, but it doesn't necessarily paint the whole picture. You might have been working full time, trying to put gas in your car and get to work while you were still going to school. And I totally get that too. And our hiring managers understand that you do have lives outside. Education is very important to AV, but we also understand if it's not, the highest GPA, but it's important. Bridge, you were going to say something?
Yeah, honestly, I don't even think I listed my GPA on my resume. If you guys didn't ask for a transcript, I don't think either. So I don't think it really had any effect on anything.
Yeah. Yeah, in fact, I think it's listed as a screening question when you apply through WayUp. I think it just needs to be a minimum of 3.0 or above. But you're right. I think we've certainly hired candidates that didn't list it on there. But if it's something that you're proud of, absolutely stick that on your resume. Good question. Another question we got from Jamil is, do any of you rely on CNC work? If so, what CAM software do you work with?
I do not.
I don't either.
Me neither.
Yeah, we're not we don't have a huge machine shop. We do have machine shops at our locations and our production floors, but they're not as big as some of the other large aerospace companies that I've seen. Like Sensata, for example, has a very large machine shop, CNC lathe. Might be using that CAM software, but not as much at AeroVironment. But good question. I thought it was worth asking the panel. Oh gosh, lots of good questions. Here's one from Dave. And Dave asks for Julie Diego, how do graduate level internships differ from undergrad?
I'm not sure if there was a huge difference for me, besides the fact that, second time coming back, I was definitely more comfortable with the team that I was working with, since I did work with the same people the second time around. But I feel like my experience was probably similar to everyone else here, where it just kind of incrementally got more challenging because you're more familiar with how, your place in the work environment and the projects that you're working with as well. So I don't think there's a huge difference there. My supervisor was definitely good at kind of measuring where my knowledge was with certain technical skills. So if I wasn't good at control systems because I didn't take a formal class on it, then it would kind of be more focused towards my strengths, like simulation based or analysis. But in the year between those two summers, as I took more classes, I became more accustomed to that and can move on up.
Excellent. And I know we only have a minute left, but I'll throw in my 2 cents. Thank you, Diego. I would just say it's a higher level, it's a higher expectation, assuming that you would have taken more advanced coursework that would tailor itself to the types of projects you'd be working on with AeroVironment. Also, the pay is commensurate with a graduate level, so you get a nice little bump as well. I'll just throw that in there. If we did not get to your question, I apologize. I thank you for joining. do connect. I think with many of us have LinkedIn. If you still have questions, we can find the answers for you as well. So again, you can find our internships to apply through our WayUp link. It's also listed on avinc.com/internships. We have a data page there where you can learn a little bit more about the program, and then it links you back to WayUp. But since you're here, I imagine if you're interested now, you will go ahead and apply. You know where that link is. So please reach out with any other questions that you may have. And we hope to see you at the next event. Thanks, everyone.